Well, hello. Hi, I'm Brant. I'm on the big screen all of a sudden. I thought somebody was going to introduce us, so that's fine. This is Shauna Niequist, right here.
Hi.
And we are so glad that she is here. And we want to talk about the stuff that she covers in her book, which is called Present Over Perfect. Has anybody read this? Okay, good. Hooray. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So one thing, we were talking backstage, so this is going to be kind of a continuation of our conversation, but you also mentioned you'd rather do this format than just getting up and talking. Why is that? Like most of us just want the microphone.
Well, you know, I would say I'm not a born performer or presenter, and anything that makes it feel more like a conversation, a little more live, a little more human, a little more anything can happen, that works better for me. My preference would be that this is one big dinner table. And so I think the idea of kind of that presentational thing, for me, as the person who has to do it, it's not my favorite. And I don't think it's necessarily people's favorite format to listen to. So I think there's something a little bit more human and connected about any kind of conversation.
It scares me to death, I'll be honest. I'm used to doing interviews on the air, but being seen is hard. Because usually when I'm talking to somebody on the phone, I can be looking at note cards or be out in the hallway or something, and they just keep talking. And so this is scary to me.
Well, usually if I'm doing a radio interview, I'm in my house and I'm like surrounded by dirty laundry or things I'm folding or I'm cooking while I'm answering. So, yeah, now we just have to like sit here and talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is good, though. Good for me. So you were saying something, and this is so good. Like we were talking backstage, and you mentioned your tree analogy, which I love. And I think all of us can relate to this. Everybody who's in radio, tell us about the tree thing. Because we're all out there constantly talking about God stuff all the time. So share that with people, if you would.
So we were talking a little bit about kind of that idea of an increasingly public life or an increased platform or more listeners or more this or more that. And I wish I had like a cooler / more modern metaphor than like a tree. It was like super old school. But I am a Midwesterner, and we have a lot of those. And this is what I think. I think if you want to have a meaningful career, whatever that looks like, if you want to use that platform in a meaningful way, you pay no attention to the branches and the leaves as they grow. You focus everything on the roots, because the higher the tree gets, the more it needs from the ground. You need to be nurtured in deep ways. You need to have meaningful relationships. The most valuable things you're going to do for that meaningful career happens when you're not doing that career. It's choosing to have a mentor. It's choosing to grow spiritually. It's choosing to leave behind anger or addiction. It's choosing to invest in your marriage. I think the things that make our ministry lives valuable are the things that we do behind the scenes that nobody sees, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, with our kids, with our families, with our friends. So you invest everything in the roots, not the branches and the leaves.
This is really hard because, again, we have to trot out, like you get to do a book every now and then, which is great. And you were on Oprah recently?
I was.
How'd that go?
It was amazing. It was
really?
Like a total dream experience.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad. Don't compare this to the Oprah thing. But this is really hard because we're doing content every day and making things every day. And it is really hard not to pay attention just to stuff up here. So what would you be saying? Anybody who has a microphone, what should we be doing as far as, you mentioned like having a mentor and stuff. Is there other things?
The people who have any sort of public life, especially any sort of public ministry life that I admire most, when I look at their lives, when I ask why it's working, it's not because of their skills in that craft. It's because of their character and practices off air, if you will. And so I think, we all have to develop different skills for the technical parts of our jobs. But what's going to give us words that are really important to me, slow, durable, beautiful. I'm in this for the long game, right? A viral anything, that's a disease. We don't want that. But we think we do. We think overnight success sounds really good, but remember the stats about lottery winners. It's awful. I think what we We want to play the long game. We want meaningful ministry lives over decades, not viral moments that leave you feeling really empty and vulnerable afterwards. And so I think the more we can invest deeply in what's happening off stage, behind the scenes, off air, that's how you build that over decades.
One thing that's really hard, too, when you're constantly making the content is everything that happens, you instantly, and I hate this about myself, but it's true. I can learn something about Jesus that's fascinating, and instead of the first thought being, wow, I need to internalize this and think about it, it's, now I got my first break. And I hate that. I know anybody who does any kind of public ministry, you instantly think, even if you're a Sunday school teacher, a lot of times you think, I learned something for other people so I can tell them instantly. And I know that's something you have to battle too. So talk about that if you would.
And I would say, well, being in radio and being a writer, they're very different in a lot of ways. One similarity is the constant pressure to create content, right? Say more things. So I love to cook, but I'm not a great baker. So if any of you are really good bakers and this analogy is not right, it's probably only half right. But what I think about that, it's like learning something valuable about God and then giving it to someone before it's worked its way through your life and your spirit. It's like you're trying to bake bread. You've got the flour and the water and the salt, and then you get the yeast. And then you hand someone a handful of yeast. Like, look, yummy bread. Now that's disgusting. The yeast has to work its way all the way through the dough and go in the oven, and then it's bread. And the same is true with what we learn. What God gives us, what wise people in our lives give us, it's for us in order to be transformed and restored and nurtured, and then it's for the people that God has entrusted to our care or our influence. And so years and years ago, I worked for a pastor, and he said that somewhere he had developed this discipline where anything he learned, either creatively, like just an interesting creative thought, or something from scripture or the spiritual idea, he would write it down in a folder and he would close that folder. And he would give it between 6 weeks and 6 months. And he said what it was doing was marinating. And again, if you like, I think maybe I'm hungry. I'm doing like a lot of food analogies. I'm always like this though. But so when you marinate something, what do? You add flavor and time to make something less tough and more delicious, okay? So if we let the things that we're learning marinate for a while, it actually makes it a better experience for the person who's receiving it.
Totally. So how do you know you're not on autopilot? Because you've said this too, like you could just say the same phrases over and over and over and over. And honestly, I hear that some when I listen to stuff, and I hear myself doing it. So how can you tell that you're just going through the motions, pumping out the content?
Well, one thing that we were talking about a little bit backstage is I'm a huge believer in cultivating a small group of people that give you really honest feedback. So I would say there are a handful of people in my life who would let me know, probably before I even ask, that I'm starting to say the same things, that things feel a little canned, that things feel a little automatic. And they say that because they know it's so valuable to me to always be learning, to always be finding a new language to say an old thing. And they know that's a value for me. And so when I stop living according to that, they let me know. So I invest very intentionally in a circle of people who reflect that back to me.
So that's the thing that points it out to you. You've been doing this for a while, like writing books. That's another issue too, is you can encounter people who just start and they're like mad at you for being successful. They don't know what you've had to go through to do it, right? I mean, it's been a while. So.
One of my editors told me recently that, like, Shauna, we use you actually as an example quite often in publishing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what an honor. Thank you. And she said, yeah, when people expect their first book to be successful, we tell them your story and how it took so many books over so many years. And I'm like, wow, what a touching thing to say about me. I am the example for how incredibly long it takes to be in any way successful. But I'll take it, right? I love my job, and I loved it 12 years ago, and I love it still, and I learned the skills a little bit more along the way, and I'm glad that I learned public speaking when there were only like 3 people in the room, right? That's how you learn. But I think the older I get, the less I believe in kind of those myths of overnight success, of what a viral anything can do. The Malcolm Gladwell idea about 10,000 hours.
Right.
I love the idea of feeling like I can still get better at this. Like, I hope I'm mortified 10 years from now at the garbage I'm writing right now, right? Because I'm getting better, because I'm learning. And I think that's what we should all be doing, is we should be constantly trying to learn new skills and gain new experiences so that we have something to offer along the way.
Yes, we were having a discussion today at our lunch thing, and we were, like, I was on with on-air people, and great table talk. That one of the questions for us was, what do you need to take your show to the next level? And almost to a person, the discussion was about, I need this piece of equipment. And I understand that. It's a great answer. But my honest thing was, and I hope I wasn't Jesus juking anybody, but it was like, honestly, I was thinking, probably I need to grow up. Like, I need to grow, and that'll take it to the next level. But it does take a while. And the one problem that we have as an industry is there's for a lot of us, and I remember being this way, it's like, what's the next market? Or then you encounter somebody who's at a big market and you instantly feel inferior because of your own problems. Like, so have you dealt with that? Do you feel content now? Did you feel content before?
I would say a couple different things. Number one, I don't ever expect contentment from my professional or creative life. Anne Lamott, maybe my favorite writer of all time, says it's an inside job, right? You're going to be content. And she says, if you weren't content before you got a publishing contract, you won't be content after. Athletes, if you think a gold medal is going to make you feel legitimized for your years of dedication, the medal can't do that. The years of dedication are actually the reward in themselves. And so I think my sense of contentment, when I feel it and when I don't, is about my understanding of my having been created by a loving God, period. Not according to my performance, not according to my appearance, not according to my financial stability. I am able to be content because I was created by a loving God in the same way that every single one of us. That's where my value comes from. It doesn't come from professional metrics. There's no there. There's no metric that will give to you what you want it to, right? It only happens on the inside.
You know what's mortifying is you don't have to deal with this quite as much, but in radio we have ratings, and every time somebody comes up with a number, people don't like you. People do like you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with like Amazon ratings, because I have those.
I am.
I have so many. If I could get back all the hours that I have spent checking my own Amazon rating, and it's just mortifying to say that. But people ask a lot of times, when an album drops, there's like crazy things happen, and there are like concerts and clubs and stuff. When a book releases, it doesn't even drop. Nothing happens. Nothing. You stay home all day long and obsessively check your Amazon rating. That's it. So, we have that same kind of math, and it'll make you nuts if you let it.
So why? Okay, and I love that you shared that too. But because we all do want to be content. Why are you checking it?
Yeah. Amen.
No, I mean,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, the right answer that you've got a whole team depending on you, and you've set goals, and you're all working on it together. And in the same way that writing a successful or not successful book is not just me, your radio metrics it's not just you, right? It's the whole this and that and all the people that contributed to it. And I would say I permit myself to just be like relentlessly obsessive about it for a while. And then I tell the people I'm close to, like, okay, I need to walk away. I need to regain my sense of ultimate contentment, and it cannot be found on Amazon.
So let me, again, another just honest question. Thank you for just being honest. I love that. But if I told you now that I knew somehow that your platform will not grow, or somebody here, the market you're at, your job, that's it. And you will finish at age 60 or 65, and that will have been the high point. Is be okay with that?
Yes, because what I love about it is the act of it, not people's response to it. I would be a copywriter. I would like transcribe notes. I like typing and making sentences. I like how words fit together. I like finding a story that comes all the way through and then surprises you. The actual craft of it, I don't need it to be well received. I need to do it. It makes my life better. It makes me think better. It makes me sleep better. I'm a better human when I'm writing, and that's the reward.
Yeah, I understand that. That's cool. I'm sorry. I cut off the applause.
There is one writer, and we're like this.
Yeah.
I see you.
So one thing you wrote about in your book, and I loved this, because again, I think a lot of us can relate, and there's a reason why a lot of us wanted a microphone. Like, we're making up for something that happened in 7th grade. And, you wrote something, everything becomes about not being good enough. For me, quoting Shauna here, for me, when someone says, I can't come to your house, I hear, you're not good enough. When someone says, that woman over there is so pretty, I hear, you're not good enough. When someone opens his or her mouth to say almost anything at all, what I hear is, you're not good enough. My question, we've been talking about this, was how do we grow up from this? And you can keep talking about this if you want. You already have been. I just want to say that resonated so much because everything seems to be about a verdict about me. And then every day is grinding instead of appreciating. I get a minute to talk to people on the air. So how have you grown out of that?
Well, I would say you can see probably, and maybe a lot of us in this room feel like, so you have that thing inside of you that wants to know if you're good enough or not, right? And you want to ask people outside of you because you don't feel it on the inside, right? And so you're like, wouldn't it be great if instead of just having to feel it, someone could show me objectively? Okay, maybe I know what I'll do. I'll get a job that's super public and performance-based so that I can know once and for all the verdict on me is good. This is what we do, and this is super dangerous, right? It seems like the right thing, and it's the exact wrong thing. And so I tried through my career to get a sense of like, hey, what's the verdict on me? What I did in the process, though, and to a certain extent, it worked. I got invited to speak at events, and people said nice things to me, and they bought my books, and simultaneously, I wasn't the kind of parent I wanted to be, and I wasn't the kind of partner to my husband that I wanted to be, and I wasn't the kind of friend or neighbor or church member that I wanted to be. And so that thing I was searching for out there through work, it was working, but I didn't feel any better on the inside, and I was watching some of the things I valued most deeply starting to atrophy and become less than I knew that they could be. And so for me, that was the pain point where I said, I am no longer willing to sacrifice these things for all this work that isn't giving me the feeling I want anyway. Like, I've created a system that doesn't work. And so this whole book is about my journey to dismantle that system of choosing performance over kind of connection with the most important people and things in my life.
It's weird because in the Christian realm, again, you can start to associate your platform with God's mission for the world. Like, God needs me to have a very large platform. Like, that's a very strange thing. Like, he doesn't need me to do anything.
Well, and one of the conversations that I had, with my husband and with some close friends is we said, okay, let's talk about it in terms of uniqueness. Because sometimes people say, yeah, but you have to be at that event. We need your voice. You have to write that book. You have to show up here. And you go, okay, like that. Thank you. No one can mother my children except me, right? No one can be a best friend to my best friend except me. No one can be the kind of daughter I want to be, the kind of sister I want to be, the kind of wife I want to be. These are my commitments that are irreplaceable. And there are a lot of ladies who can stand on a lot of stages and write a lot of books. So I'm going to let them do that while I'm focusing on this. And I think you just have to trust that God will keep raising up books and albums and radio hosts if you decide to take a step back. He can continue his ministry in the world without you, but my family can't thrive without me.
Yeah, the kingdom of God will somehow go on. Yeah, I love that. You have a chapter in your book on jealousy, and I'm reading what you said here, that envy can at least be instructive, which is so true. I was thinking about that. Like, if you find you're struggling with envy and jealousy, at least, as bad as that is, and it's something you want to get rid of, but at least it tells you something, like what you really are yearning for. So how has that been true in your life?
Well, I think there's this Christian belief that if you feel jealous, you're bad for feeling it, so don't tell anybody and just stop thinking about it, right? Just get it out of there really quickly. And I think there's something really valuable about saying, I'm going to be really honest with you that I feel this, and let's take a peek at it before we work its way out of the system, right? So one thing I realized was that in this season where I was working in a pretty obsessive, relentless way, trying to be kind of a superstar, highly responsible, highly capable person, I was really jealous of one person in my life.
It's not.
Oh, this is going to be awkward. It's, yes. Yeah, there's a radio host. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
No, who? You don't have to say.
But what I realized is that what I perceived that she had more freedom to rest and play and author her own life, and I was tired and isolated and unhappy, and it looked nicer over there. And so I said, okay, what does she have that I don't have? Well, she's made some choices to organize her life in a different way. She's had some hard conversations. She's learned to say no. She's learned that professionally there's no there once you've become an isolated, exhausted, cranky person, that you don't have anything else to give. And so I realized that while I don't want to be a jealous person all my life, my jealousy can instruct me to what my deeper desires are, and then it's my responsibility to reorient my life around those things.
I feel like I remember C.S. Lewis. I don't remember him saying it. I remember reading C.S. Lewis say, like, C.S. and I were in the hot tub, and he said, no, I remember he had said that every third thought, even when he was writing stuff like Narnia, he was like, every third thought's about me. And I feel that way too. If it's not a third, it's a half. Like, even when I'm sitting down to write or I'm on the air. And the weird thing is, if you're trying to build a brand or build your thing, almost all your thoughts are about you, versus if you just kill that ambition, focus on actually your show gets better, or your books actually get better because you're finally content. So you're finally thinking, how can I be a blessing to these people? Does that make sense? Like,
well, and I think what all of us are doing, like, I don't write books, like, I don't read them, right? I know what's in them. I'm creating something that I hope helps and is meaningful to other people. You guys aren't like, I hope you're not, like at the end of your show, like playing it back, like, oh, I was funny, right? It's not for you. It's for something bigger than you, and that's where the joy is. Some of you do it, right? Is that what I'm hearing? You're like kicking people under the table, like, I totally caught you.
You know what's awful is we're actually told to do it. I know, and I'm like, I can't. We talked about this earlier today because you're supposed to air check yourself, and there's nothing. Can you imagine? You get done and you have to listen to this interview like as soon as you're done.
I don't even like listening to like when I leave a voicemail.
No, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So here's another thing we struggle with. I talk about the envy and jealousy thing because it shows exactly what you're yearning for. Do you feel like Christian culture? Maybe this is an easy question. Makes it actually puts an expectation on people of perfection and being better, and that it's even hard. Everybody struggles with it, but it even becomes more pronounced in evangelical culture, for instance.
Oh, absolutely, yes, and more so for women. I think there is so little space in evangelical culture, and particularly for women, to be kind of anything outside of this very narrow accepted norm. And I think and you and I talked about this, but one of the things I'm so passionate about all the time is sort of opening the doors a little wider and a little wider, and there's room for you and for you and for you and for people at the edges, for the misfits. We were talking about, that's a word we both love. I felt like a misfit a lot of my life, and I always want to be opening the doors for people who feel like this is not for them. It's for all of us, and it has to be. And so it can't just be for this message is for all of us, for every person on this earth. And so everything we create has to be beyond the bounds of just our particular culture or denomination or stripe, because the message is so much bigger than that.
What you said, that's interesting because you grew up in the suburbs, right, of Chicago, and you grew up in church culture, at the epicenter of church culture. Like, why did you feel like a misfit? I'm curious about that.
Well, yeah, I think because, and I don't know, so I'm going to like completely date myself, so I'm just going to tell you I'm 42 years old, and what that means is the youth group that I was a part of in the Midwest was like run by all, I think like football players and ex-military, right? It was very male. It was very aggressive. There was a lot of running, and we talked a lot about foxholes. And I was like I am a 14-year-old girl who loves to write poetry and loves ballet. I don't know any of these things that you're talking about, right? Like, I don't know military terminology, and I don't know a lot of like football terms. And so I think just in those ways, if we're not careful, our language can, without meaning to, exclude groups of people, genders, people of different cultures, people of different backgrounds, people with different passion areas. And so I think I really wanted to be seen. I wanted to find a way to be a Christian that was also creative and arts-oriented and story-oriented. And so it took me more until college to figure that out. But I think probably we've all had moments where we felt like, you all are like doing this thing, but wasn't the story supposed to be bigger than that?
How do you feel like we could do a good job if you got that Christian radio microphone of opening those doors up wider for people? Is that
well, I think any of us who are Christians, who are ever given a microphone, literally or otherwise, whether it's your blog or your book or like an actual microphone, which a lot of you do, every time you speak, you have the opportunity to either perpetuate something narrow or widen it a little bit. So, for example, a lot of the reason I write the way I do, with a pretty intentional sense of I'm sort of showing you a little bit behind the curtain, it's because I always wanted to know that everybody had something behind the curtain, right? Like, it's not just me. So when I talk about difficult seasons in my marriage, or difficult seasons in my faith, seasons of doubt, or seasons of despair, those are moments where we have the opportunity to help other people know you're not alone and you're not crazy. That's always my goal. I want there to be someone out there who, because of what I said, felt like there was a little more space for them to exist in this world. You're not alone and you're not crazy. And so every story you tell can either perpetuate like all our lives are perfect and they're all the same, or you can say, hey, this thing was really difficult about my life. I don't know if you knew that. Or this was an interesting but painful experience. Then I think probably I'm not alone in that. But every chance you get to dismantle the myth of our homogenous experiences and our shiny experiences, I think that's a gift that you give your listeners.
It's something else you wrote. Being brave can mean getting off the drug of performance. In what way is performance? Because we all have to do this, and you have to do this. How's it a drug? Why would you describe it as a drug?
Well, I would say the way I'm using it is a drug is anything you use to anesthetize your pain or to create the illusion that you're safe from something scary, right? That's why people drink. That's why people develop addictions of many kinds, to anesthetize the pain and to continue to perpetuate the myth that you can hold this scariness at bay. And some of us are trying to outrun things by making extremely fancy, notable professional lives. But that's not super different than a shopping addiction or a gambling problem or anything we use to hold the pain away and make things not seem so scary. And so if you think about, if you've spent any time in kind of the recovery movement or the people who are pursuing sobriety, it's learning to live without the drug. So if you're used to people making a fuss over you everywhere you go, and you intentionally try to get off that drug, it's really lonely and really scary, but it forces you to grapple with how much you are depending on those voices, right? And it's scary and it's transformative.
It is. You think it's particularly dangerous in a Christian sense because our performance, again, we think we're doing kingdom work, so we confuse ourselves and our own agendas with with that? Is that a coherent question?
Yeah, I think one of the things I always tell people, like, I'm a writer. I don't like run a ministry. I'm not, I like thinking about it like I'm a writer, like my friend's a kindergarten teacher, like my other friend is a lawyer. This is a job. And that takes it out of like the enormity of like, hey, you guys don't bother me, I'm doing the Lord's work, right? Like I would say my friend who teaches kindergarten is also doing the Lord's work, right? And her job's a lot harder than mine. And so I think I like kind of all of us taking it down a notch. Like, of course it has spiritual value, totally. But a lot of things do that we pretend don't, right? Like education, like any number, the arts. And so if we can just take ourselves a little less seriously, and I would say that the spiritual work I do, the most spiritual work I do is parenting. My job could go away like this, and I still have a big job to do on this planet for those 2 little boys. That's my job.
I love that. And I've always had a hard time. I had to come to a crucible. Like, I was thinking about going to law school, and I was amped about thinking of myself as a lawyer. And that I just felt significant, and opted to take a job as a morning show producer instead. And it meant I got every afternoon with my kids for like 10 years. But my ego took a beating. But it was awesome. It really was. Like, it's just one of those, it's a weird thing, because once you try to actually kill that ambition, and then you become better at what you're doing too, it's kind of strange. Go ahead.
Because it's coming from a pure place.
It's
right?
much purer, and there's less me just grinding. Again, I actually had a prayer one time. I was walking around here when we lived in Florida, and I'm like, God, I give up, because I'm trying to be important. And the weird thing is, my job, I've just been better at it. Finally gave up.
Well, I mean, when I said I was going to write about how I want to stop speaking and writing so much, and how I think the whole publishing pressure is sort of a sham, and how it doesn't really do inside you the things you want, but it actually might compromise really important parts of your life. I had friends who were like, yeah, don't write that in a book, right? Like, that's like, I have friends who refer to it as the moment I pulled the ripcord on my career. Like, you can't write in black and white that you don't want to speak at events anymore, because guess what? Then you're never going to. And I was like, oh, that sounds wonderful. That's exactly my plan. And right now, like, I do this about 4 times a year. I used to do this 120 times a year. So it worked for my life, and also it created something out of my pain and out of the things I learned the hard way that has helped other people, because it wasn't me grinding out something that I thought was going to work for some nameless person out there. It was the truth of where I was, and I was upset enough to just say it all, and it ended up connecting with people in a way that other things I've worked on that I had a lot more ego invested in did not.
And then you wind up on Oprah after going, I don't want to be in public anymore. So how did that go, by the way? I mean, describe that experience. I don't like.
It was like, if you think that she is a brilliant, intuitive, super present, magic dream person, that is true.
Huh.
It was like a total dream experience, and her team was unbelievable, and she was unbelievable, and I can't say enough good things about it. But like, so you don't get to know her address. They pick you up in a car at your hotel, and they just take you somewhere, and then you're there for a couple hours, and then like real quickly they're like, thanks for coming, and then they like put you back out there. And my husband and I were like, we were there for like 90 minutes, and now it's over. Like, did that happen? Like, it's just, you're in, you do it, and you're done. Yeah. You're like, should we get like tacos? I don't know.
We were friends. You're shuffling me off.
It was incredible.
One thing, and we got to wrap up here in a few minutes, but I love something you said, which is, it's easier to be impressive to strangers than it is to be, this is so good. It's easier to be impressive to strangers than it is to be consistently kind behind the scenes. And that is a huge ministry thing.
The reason I went on this journey personally is because there was a moment where I was traveling too much and writing too much and speaking too much and gone too much, and I was too afraid. Do you know what I mean? Like, my impatience was too close to the surface, and I wasn't sleeping well, and I was just not my best self in any way. And I snapped at one of the kids, and then the other kid and my husband, and all of a sudden we're in this very bad place. And I said these words: everybody likes me better than you guys like me. Oh, you know what that means? It means I'm doing my life wrong, all the way wrong. You know who it matters, whose opinion matters? Those three in all the earth. At the end of my life, what matters is what I gave to and created with those three people. And I was sacrificing those relationships and my own soul and my relationship with God so that total strangers could think I was really charming, like at O'Hare Airport when they stopped to talk to me about things. That math doesn't work, and it didn't work in my life. And every part of my life is better now than it was then. My marriage is better. I'm a better parent. I'm a better neighbor. I'm thinking better. I'm writing better. There is an ease and a contentedness in my life now that there was not in that incredibly frantic, exhausted season, and I will never, never, never go back.
I don't want you to say anything else. That's awesome. Thank you, Shauna Niequist. Incredible. Please, Shauna Niequist. Fantastic job. That's really good.